Hello, I'm Ross Tayler, your host and guide for Sacred Sundays, a space to slow down, tune in, and return to what's sacred within and around you. I'm also a life coach for empaths and sensitive souls, walking alongside those who are ready to come home to who they actually are. These conversations are part of fulfilling that purpose, a collective exploration of what it means to live in connection with the sacred. Some weeks you'll hear a sound-based offering to open the space. Other times we'll simply begin in conversation. However it unfolds, this is an invitation into presence, connection, and the beauty of the unseen. If these conversations find you, please subscribe, rate, and share so others can find their way here. Pour a cup of tea, settle in, and let's begin. Today on Sacred Sundays, our guest is Lee Shanks. Lee is a trained psychic medium that resides with her family in the village of Shawnigan Lake here on Vancouver Island. Passionate about teaching and mentoring, Lee is especially drawn to beginners, affectionately calling herself the Walmart greeter of the newly awakened. Known for her kindness, humor, and accuracy, Lee welcomes people into the world of mediumship with grace and compassion. She works from her home studio in Shawnigan Lake, offering corporate and private readings to clients across Vancouver Island and beyond. Lee is also a proud co-owner of the Blue Caterpillar Emporium, a metaphysical tea shop in Cobble Hill, BC, where she and her business partners have created a welcoming space for spiritual exploration, community, and connection. Welcome, Lee. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Good afternoon, Ross. I'm so happy to be here.
And excited to have this conversation. You and I met through a mutual contact, and I actually went down to the Blue Caterpillar Emporium and met you for the first time. And I just love that space. It's just so fun and whimsical. And I love the conversations that happen there and to be able to go and have a nice cup of tea and do some work.
Thanks for saying so. That's exactly why we created the space, was just giving, people that are into the metaphysical, a little bit of the out there stuff, a place to gather and feel comfortable and build community.
I love it. And you've definitely done that. So in your bio, you mentioned that you're the Walmart greeter of the newly awakened. And I love that. I love that. And I wonder how many listeners might be sitting on the fence of, am I a medium? Do I have gifts? Do I not have gifts? And the fact that you love working with people who are newly awakened and that is a passion of yours. I'm curious if you could share your experience of coming into mediumship in that context, and also perhaps what you would like to say to anybody that is having that experience.
Sure. So I'm going to take you back a little bit to my own personal awakening, because, like many of your listeners, I'm sure I experienced multiple little incidents over my entire life that sort of, if I had followed the breadcrumbs at the time, might have clued me into the fact that I was a psychic medium, but I was too busy, living my life. And so, fast forward several decades, various things going on, I would get, a deep knowing, and things would work out just exactly how I knew they would. But I never really questioned those kind of things. I'd get prophetic dreams that would come through within hours, and I'd be in the moment. I'd be, oh my God, that was so crazy, that's wild. And for maybe 24, 48 hours, I'd be all up into the experience, and then I would just forget about it. I'd put it at the back of my mind. I'd think, okay, that was a one of, that was weird, I'm unusual, and I'm crazy, and I would just not carry on with even thinking about it. Right. So those experiences happened, for the first 50 years of my life, just about. And then I experienced my own awakening. Now, many people experience an awakening through a traumatic event. They lose a parent or a child or somebody that was particularly close to them, and they start seeking answers. And that's the beginning of their awakening. And for me, my favorite rooster died.
Mm.
Mr. Handsome was a wonderful rooster, and I had a fairly large flock of ducks and chickens and geese. And Mr. Handsome was well known for coming up to you in the coop yard and sitting on your knee and having a little chat. And he was very gentle and he was very chatty and he was just a love. And he won me lots of blue ribbons at the local fairs. And he was well loved by the family. Well, one day I went out to the chicken yard and there's Mr. Handsome. He'd gotten into a fight with one of the younger roosters and he was beaten up significantly. And so I separated him from the rest of the flock and I put him up sort of over on the other side of the yard in his own little coop yard. And I fixed up a little doghouse with a door on it for him. And I began ministering to his wounds over the next few days. One night I went out to lock him up and I jokingly said, Mr. Handsome, you're getting a little spoiled here, buddy. You really need to get it together, get back to your girls. They're missing you.
Mm.
And I very clearly heard out of the dark behind me a voice say, this will be the last night you have to do this. And I swung around fully expecting to see my husband standing on the deck 20 feet behind me, and there was nobody there. And I went, whoa, that was weird. And like every other time in my life, I instantly dismissed it and carried on with what I was doing. I went down and locked up all the rest of the birds, got everybody in, tucked in nicely, came in the house, went to bed. I got up the next morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee, I stepped out onto the deck, and I looked over to Mr. Handsome's little coop yard. The door on that little doghouse was wide open, and all I ever found was feathers. And it rocked me on my heels. And I went in the house, and my husband was just inside the doorway, and he looked at me and he said, oh my goodness, what's happened? And I explained about Mr. Handsome, and he's like, oh, I am so sorry. I knew he's your favorite rooster, and I'm so sorry. And I'm like, you know what? In this moment, it's not even about Mr. Handsome. It's about that voice that I've heard countless times in the last 49 years of my existence, and I've ignored them before. And this time I very clearly ignored it to the detriment of Mr. Handsome. And that really bothers me because I don't know where this voice came from. And so I just went and sat on my front veranda and I just said to my husband, I need to process this because I've had this stuff happen. I've mentioned it to you before. I told you about it when I knew I was going to win a 100th anniversary Harley Davidson from the radio station. I knew 3 months in advance I was winning it. I told everybody it was my motorcycle. And when I won, I just went, yeah, I knew, but I didn't question it. Right. And I said, so you've heard me express, I know these things. I've had these dreams, but this is, it all means something and I can't figure out what it means. So I just went and sat on my veranda for the day. My poor husband would just come out every hour or so and put a coffee in front of me and leave as I processed all those times over my life where I'd had a knowing, I'd had the voice, I'd had a vision. And I realized they weren't sort of one of anomalies. They were, in fact, those breadcrumbs leading me to a truth about me that I wasn't aware of in that moment. And by the end of the day, and I'm talking hours of sitting there processing all these things. And one of the things that I had to process in that time was the fact that my mom used to always say after the fact, oh, I had a feeling that was going to happen. And we used to just chuckle and roll our eyes and go, oh, Mom had a feeling. So in that processing, I had to go in and accept the fact that my mom probably did have feelings about things in advance, but was too afraid to own them in the moment. So she would say it afterwards. I had a feeling, and we would just roll our eyes. And I had to accept that and send an apology to my mom in heaven and say, I get it now. I don't know what this is, but I understand a little bit better. By the end of the day, I just said, you know what, Spirit, I don't have a clue what this is. I don't know what's going on, but I tell you what, where you lead, I will follow. And that's kind of how I ended my day. The next day, I received an invitation from a somewhat famous psychic medium in Alberta that I was on her mailing list saying scholarships to mediumship school are now open. And I'm like, well, that's pushing it. I've just accepted that I'm intuitive and I might hear voices, but I'm certainly not a medium. That's talking to dead people. That's something completely different. So I kind of chuckled it off. And then I heard the echo of my own voice. Where you lead, I will follow. Oh my God, fine, I'll apply, but I'm not expecting anything. So I applied for the scholarship. And in the meantime, I went to Duncan to see a psychic medium I'd never met before. And while I was there, she said to me, you're a light worker. And I said, well, what's a light worker? And she said, oh, you've got a job here to do on Earth. And I'm like, well, what's that job? And she says, well, you'll discover that for yourself. And I'm, okay. So of course I left there and I'm Googling what's a light worker. And I'm kind of getting excited by all the things that I'm coming to understand about this role as a light worker. And I've always been the kind of person in my life, I love to help people and being in services lights me up. And I'm like, oh, it means I get to be in service to others. And maybe that's my new role moving forward. Understanding, please, by this time, I had been in bed with a chronic pain condition for 4 years and had given up my previous iterations of careers and what I thought they were going to be. and had completely surrendered to that was my new reality until this experience. So I was all high on this idea of being a light worker, and I happened to be going to this woman's house to, I don't know, she'd bought something off me and I said I'd deliver it. So took it over there, and while I was there, we just started a conversation. She said, "Oh, come in here and see." And I walked into one room she had there. She said, "Look." And she had this entire wall of cubbies, and they were filled with baskets of crystals, just baskets everywhere. And there must have been like, 50 or 60 cubbies there. And she goes, "Pick one." I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "Pick a crystal." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I've always been drawn to amethyst. So I picked, she would have given me anything. I had free range, and I picked just a beautiful amethyst point. And she's like, "Are you sure that's what you want?" I said, "This is what's calling me. This is what I want." So I was all excited. I'm thinking, this woman, she's got crystals. She knows what I'm about. She gets this whole light worker thing. So here I am floating on cloud nine. And I said, "Yeah," because apparently I said, "I'm experiencing this thing called an awakening, and I'm a light worker." And she looked at me very coolly and shrugged her shoulders and went, "Yeah, isn't everybody?" And completely burst my bubble of joy. And I spent literally days ruminating over that because I had been so joyful, so high on life and excitement and all this other thing. And she just made me feel like it was nothing. So over the next coming days, probably just about a week or a week and a half, I allowed myself to convince myself that awakenings are a big deal. I'm coming into a whole new iteration of who I am. I may not understand it, but I'm allowed to be excited about it. And it was in that moment that I said, never, ever, if somebody comes to me that is newly awakened, doesn't know what it means, doesn't know where it's leading them, never, ever will I make them feel how I felt in that moment. I'm going to make sure that they know it is a big deal. It is something to be celebrated. It's
Mm,
something to be excited about. So that's why I have such a passion for the beginners and the newly awakened.
what a great story. I mean, there was so many parts of that story that, like when that voice came through at the chicken coop
Right,
that night, I just got full
right.
chills in my body. I could feel it. It was just like, whoa.
Yeah,
And
it was pretty incredible.
yeah, and I love what you're saying about bringing that experience to the newly awakened because it is important. And then I can also see the perspective of that woman of like, of saying, well, we all have gifts is probably what she was saying on some level, but that wasn't meeting you where you were at, right? Because this was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It was more about her dismissiveness of it, right?
Right.
She could have in this moment, and think about it. This is why I call myself the Walmart greeter of the newly awakened, because the Walmart greeter is that first person that sets the tone for your experience,
So true.
right? And so
Yeah.
that I wanted people to know that I don't care if I'm at this for 100 years, and I truly hope I am, that I want to be just as excited about the 1,050th person that comes to me and says I'm newly awakened as I
Hmm.
was about the first and my own,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And as you were talking, there was a couple of things that came up for me. And one was that the first time that I experienced what I now call intuition was probably about 29 years ago. I was working at a Wendy's restaurant. End of the story is that I got robbed at knife point. Somebody broke into the, like, stayed in the restaurant, stayed in the ceiling, came down afterwards and robbed me at knife point. But the funny thing was, when I went back through the night, like this happened to be the first day that I worked at that restaurant. I was just newly promoted, just getting to know the place. And there was a number of things that happened. One was I walked in and it was the first Wendy's I had worked at with a false ceiling. All the other ones had a solid ceiling. And I made note of that when I walked through for the first time. And later in the night, it was one of those days where everything went sideways. And strangely, I was sitting outside. I used to smoke back then. I'm sitting in the dining room smoking. And this fellow walks towards me. And right in that moment, I was like, something's not right. I didn't know what it was, couldn't articulate it, but he came over, he introduced himself, said he worked there. And I was like, oh, nice to meet you. Went and sat at an empty table and didn't have food, didn't order food. Something happened. I got distracted, went back to work. But the moment I encountered him later that evening, standing in front of me with a knife, I was like, oh my God, it's him. Like I made the connection of like, this is the person that I was like, something's not right. And luckily for everyone, it all ended smoothly and it was quite the experience. But I remember clearly, it's like I knew something.
Yeah, that deep knowing,
Hmm.
right? What we know now is claircognizance,
Exactly. And
right?
that's
And
my
yeah,
Claire. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So, in my training, I've certainly come to learn to understand that no clair is any better than any other, whether you're clairvoyant or clairaudient, or maybe it's your smell or your taste. But I'm telling you that claircognizance, that clear knowing, I may misunderstand something that spirit shows me. I might mishear a word that they share with me, but I will never mistake that deep knowing,
Yeah. So true.
right? So none are any better than the others, but it's kind of my favorite.
Right. And it's interesting as a male going to like shamanic circles and intuitive circles and listening to the stories that get shared by someone who's clairvoyant and all the imagery and all the detail. It's really interesting to have that contrast as someone with claircognizance and being like, why am I not having that experience?
Right? Yeah. Everybody develops differently.
Exactly.
Right? So I have my claircognizance. I'm fortunate that I have my clairs are pretty strong except for my smell and my taste. And
Okay.
seriously, because I prefer it if spirit doesn't use those clairs,
Right.
simply because there was an experience I had several years ago where I tasted and smelled liver and onions.
Okay.
And my entirely least favorite food in the entire world is liver and onions. So
Uh-huh.
I shut that down. I said, Spirit, you're not allowed to do that with me anymore. It's only in the last couple of years I've opened myself up to using it again because I understand that, sometimes a smell may be the strongest connection you have to somebody. Their favorite perfume or what their laundry detergent smelled like on their clothes or just their particular aroma. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
smell can be a very strong connection, as can, mom's baking or grandma's cookies or whatever. So I've opened myself up to them. I just don't use them very often. But again, my claircognizance, I trust that one in place. We're all human. We are going to second guess things,
For sure.
right? I never second guess my claircognizance.
I love that. You also made me think about something in my lineage. I remember talking with my mother about psychic gifts, and she made the comment that she shut that down and that her mother shut that down. And I was like, wow, like you were both aware of these gifts and didn't bring them out into the world. And
Right?
yeah, so neat. And also sad because it wasn't possible to speak about those things back then. And it's interesting to think about that in hindsight. And I bring this up more so for anyone that might be having similar thoughts. We live in a world now where people are so receptive to hearing about this. And yet, I always think of people in smaller communities where there might not be a circle that they can go to, or there might not be a gathering that they can experience. And yet, people are probably out there.
So I've had many of those conversations with clients that have crossed my path, right? Countless times I've been working with a mother, grandmother, or great grandmother in spirit that says, I had the gift. But maybe back in the day, grandma would talk about having the ladies over for tea in the afternoon, and they would make a game out of reading pictures in each other's cups, but they weren't reading. What they were
Hmm.
doing was playing a game. And so it was safe and it wasn't involving spirit and it wasn't against any religion they were involved in, right? So it was a safe activity. But what they always say is, I wasn't free to explore this. You
Hmm.
are.
Right.
Please pick up the torch and allow yourself to explore who you are as a soul being, not just as
Uh-huh.
a human being. Explore who you are as a soul being so that you can really and truly flourish to the best of your abilities in this lifetime.
And I want to speak to your level of excitement around this work because it really is like I work with people helping them find their purpose and helping them find that spark. And it's so evident in your energy how much you love this work. What can
I
you say
really,
about
really
that?
do.
Yeah.
It's probably because I had a difficult upbringing, a difficult childhood.
Mm,
Lots of, big T and small t traumas that I've experienced. And through it, I've always just sort of muddled my way through. And I was surviving, but I never really felt like I was thriving. Right. And, eventually I became a journalist. I spent several years as a journalist. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. Right. I left that career, went into government communications, same thing. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. And in the job that I was in with government, I was quite high up there in the communications. I managed and built a communications department for the largest crown corporation in the province. I'm very proud of the work I had done and was doing, but again, not passionate about it. And when I was leaving that role because I was just sort of done with it and I wanted to move on, my next natural step should have been to go work for industry, right? I would have been paid exorbitant amount of monies to do crisis communications for oil and gas pipelines in Alberta. But every time I thought about it, I just got this sinking in my stomach. And I just went to my husband one day and I just said, I know I don't want to do this anymore. We've talked about that. And I know that my next step should be to the oil and gas sector. I said, but every fiber of my being is saying no. And my husband, God bless him, just went, well, then don't. And I'm like, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And he goes, well, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. And we did, right?
Mhm.
But that's about the time that my chronic pain sort of raised its ugly head. And I took a journey through the medical system and really took me down. I have a chronic nerve disorder that I've had brain surgeries for. It didn't correct it. It's invasive. It's horrific to live with. But when I started opening myself to my spiritual journey, it began to take a back seat. The condition that I have, I'm not supposed to be able to recover from ever,
Mhm.
but I have. I am now having a life again. And I credit as much to my spiritual journey as I do to the fact that, because they both sort of happened at the same time, is I got off all pharmaceuticals and I exchanged all of that for more natural medications that worked for me. Now, I do want to make very clear that I fully support and believe in the Western medical health system. It definitely has a place. It was not for me for this particular condition. Okay. And so coming out of that and finding more natural ways all happened about the same time that I experienced my awakening. I believe that I was too numbed out from the pharmaceuticals to have experienced this otherwise. So my
Wow, that's
passion, yeah, is because I have found like from day one, without the understanding of what was going on, I I got that inner excitement. I got that flame lit within me.
mhm,
And from day one, I was passionate about following it wherever it took me.
right. And so interesting because the woman that you met was kind of like a test. She kind of like blew out your flame for a moment.
Right. And I could have stayed with that.
Right.
I could have just stayed with that and went, okay, well, it's no big deal. I'm
Mhm.
making stuff up in my head. I shouldn't be this excited. And I'll just go back to being average Lee. Right. And I don't want anybody to think that just because I've tapped into my abilities that makes me think in any way, shape, or form I'm above average. I'm not. I'm just an average person that's now tapped into my soul being. And that's
Right.
available to all of us,
Mhm.
right? And my life has changed. Like saying a 180 just doesn't quite cover it. 10 years ago, I was in bed literally for 4 years, a majority of my time in constant chronic pain,
Mhm.
right? I wasn't living a life. I was a spectator in life.
Right.
And now I'm fully engaged. Don't get me wrong, I still have my bad days,
Sure. We
right?
all do.
But they're few and far between. And I get to experience watching somebody else light up as they tap into what they're capable of.
Mhm.
I hold classes sometimes. I've invited so my favorite part of holding the classes, particularly for beginners, is watching them do things for the first time and realizing that they can. Because I remember walking into every single class. You were good friends with Reverend Nicole Powell. She was my first development circle leader in person. I had done some online courses with Carmel Joy Baird, but Nicole was my first in person. And I remember going to class every week telling myself, well, this is the one where you're shown to be a fake, a phony, it's all in
Mm.
your head, you're making it up. And I would walk out of every single class going, holy crap, I can do this stuff. And now I get to watch other people have that experience. Right. So in one particular class recently, I invited a friend in and he was quite spiritual and he went to the spiritualist centers, enjoyed meditation and all the other thing, 76 years old. And he said, Lee, why would I come to class? I can't do any of this. I'm like, just come. I just invite you in and just see. And I am telling you, the look on his face, the very first reading he did, because he's like, I don't know, I'm just seeing this and I'm seeing that and I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. And then his recipient, his sitter was able to say, I understand it all. And this is how. And she made the connection between those dots and made a picture for him and it blew his mind. I will never forget the look on his face. And I get to see
Wow.
that so often with the beginners.
I love that. You're kind of reminding me of when I worked at the treatment center in Squamish. This 92-year-old woman showed up, not so much for addiction, but a little bit of addiction. But she said, I just want to make the best of the rest of my life, and I need some help to do that. And it was just like so beautiful. So it's never too late, is the point.
It is never too late. In fact, when somebody tries to tell me that, I always remind, like, I was 50 just about before I woke up to the fact that I could do these things, right?
Hmm.
Further than that, when I was a journalist, my favorite story that I ever did was I went to interview an 80-year-old woman, and she was celebrating her 80th birthday by climbing into an airplane that she planned to jump out of. And she was also doing it to celebrate the fact that she had just graduated with her Bachelor of Arts degree
Wow.
at 80.
Hmm.
You're never too old. There's
No.
no such thing. And I would suggest that science is now backing that up. Everybody thinks, as you age, your brain starts to get a little soft and you're not quite
Hmm.
as capable. Well, science is proving that to be all wrong, right? You can
Right.
create new neural pathways and stay just as sharp as ever and all that. But yeah, I always think of her when somebody says, well, it's too late for me. It's never
Hmm.
too late.
There was something you said earlier that reminded me of a podcast that I was watching with Richard Rudd, who he's does the
Mhm.
Gene Keys, and a polymath whose name I can't come up with right now. But the polymath was speaking about the calculations that take place in Gene Keys. And then he mentioned another calculation which has to do with your name that was not a simple calculation. It was something a little deeper. And what he came forward with was this belief that every single person on the planet has a unique number that identifies them. And then he said, this is the unique energy that we each bring to the world, that we're supposed to bring out into the world. And just hearing that made me think, wow, like it just proves how true this is. We all have a purpose here. We all have something that we're meant to do or a way that we're meant to be. And that is the gift that we bring. And
Yes.
it's so beautiful when we get to see people that are doing that. And at the same time, there's a cost to pushing all of that down. I think that we're always being guided in some way or another to allow that to come forward. And when I think of the story I shared about my mom, that would have been a pushing down of those gifts and that unique expression.
Yes, exactly. And I love that you're sharing that because, for one, we sometimes think that our unique expression has to be something large and grandiose, and it doesn't,
It
right?
doesn't.
We are we are being healers just by allowing somebody to sit and vent, right? And hold space for that person. That allows us to, and if that's all you're doing, that's a big gift you're giving somebody, right? And I don't want to discount that as a small thing at all. It's not. So it's not always the big grandiose things that people think of. It's always the small day-to-day things as well, right?
Absolutely. And to your point of the Walmart greeter can change someone's day and light them up as much as anybody else can.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about, right? And so with opening up to understanding ourselves as soul beings, I always joke around and I say, this human experience, it's a lovely thing, right? That's what we're here for, is the experiences, right? To learn and grow and expand our awareness in. And that to me is kind of like the human sandbox of life. Right? There's good toys in there. Sure there is, right? And we get to meet lots of neighborhood kids and stuff like that. But it's kind of limiting. It's not as big as it could be, et cetera. Or we can go play in the sandbox of the universe,
Hmm.
right? It's the biggest one available. It's got all the best toys. There's new ones being introduced all the time, and the neighbor's cat never comes and uses it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It is always, and it is that area, that universal sandbox that we get to play in, that miracles take place in every single day,
Hmm.
right? So if we tap into that as our human selves and lean into ourselves as soul beings and open ourselves to the guidance that's available to us from the universe. Now, I love the fact that I call that God, universe, source,
Right.
Gus. And I
Right.
learned that from you. So thank you. I can't even tell you how many people I share it with that
Excellent. I
love
love
that.
that.
So when we just hand it over to Gus,
Hmm.
right? In understanding and awareness that there is a higher power available to us. And we
Hmm.
each, every single one of us has a divine team dedicated solely to us, right?
Hmm.
Your divine team doesn't give a flying fig about me, and my divine team doesn't give a flying fig about you. But I tell you, my divine team just wants me to have the best life possible and available to me. So they're
Uh-huh.
going to give me the guideposts, the signs, the symbols that lead me into that life. But if I'm not aware of them,
Uh-huh.
and if I don't have a relationship with them and I'm not trusting them, then I'm still over here in my human experience trying to slog my way through life all on my own, right? And our brains are wonderful, wonderful tools, but they'll also lead us wrong 6 ways to Sunday.
So
Our
true.
intuition will always lead us exactly where we need to be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I say to people, like tapping into your own intuition. And when you're not trusting it, it's the same as if a stranger walked up to you and said, "Hey, Ross, you need to go down this street like 3 blocks, turn right, go a block, turn left, and go into the building with the second door on the left
Uh-huh.
hand side." You're going to look at this person like, "I don't know you, you're weird," and never, and just keep walking,
Right.
right? But if it's somebody that you know and somebody that you trust, and they say, "Hey, Ross, oh my God, you've got to go down here 3 blocks, turn, go here, go in this doorway. There's something there for you, and you're going to love it." You're going to go, "Okay." And you're going to
Right.
be excited to see what the surprise is, right?
Right.
That's the difference between working with your team and without your team. They can
Mm-hmm.
guide you all you want, but if you don't know them and you don't trust them, how likely are you going to be to listen to them,
So true. It's
right?
so true.
So make the connections, build the relationships.
Mm-hmm. And it can be small things. Like this morning, I was going to a store that I wanted to buy something and they were closed today. I didn't realize they were closed. And I was walking back to the car and I heard this voice that said, "No, go to the other store." And I was like, "Oh, right, the other store." So I went to the other store and I found exactly what I wanted, but I didn't expect to find it there. It was great.
Right?
So again, that little voice was like, "Go to that store." It can happen in bigger ways too.
Yes, it's not always about that guy looks a little fishy to
Mm-hmm.
me. It's not always about, as I've had, slow down, you're driving too fast, and it helped me
Uh-huh.
avoid a head on collision. But sometimes it's move that cup off the edge of the counter, it's going to get broken, right? It's sometimes go to the door your dog wants in and it's pouring rain and they're too stubborn to ask,
Right.
right? It's the little things. It's knowing who's
Mm-hmm.
going to call before they call. It's knowing this next song that's coming on the radio before it comes on. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's the big ones, right?
Sure.
What's your first step to get over this mountain of a challenge in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, exactly. There's two things. One I want to say, and then another question. You were talking about the mind leading us astray 6 ways to Sunday. And in human design, there's this idea of not letting our mind drive the car. In other words, if we let the mind drive the car, we're not going to go to the right places. We're not going to have the same experiences. And really, we're meant to be in the back seat. And to use the acronym that you mentioned, like Gus is the one who drives the car. And so
That's
if we
right.
can surrender to that, then all we need to do is enjoy the ride. And I can tell you from my own experimentation with that, it's easier said than done. I mean, we live in a culture that is all about thinking our way through everything and trying to
100%.
make life happen. And I can tell you that it just doesn't work. Like it's laughable. We place so much self-importance on the fact that we're the ones making our life happen, but it just is not true. We are
It's so not true.
we are passengers in this experience, and this comes back to all of the teachings that are 5,000 years old and more. They knew this. They figured it out. Just wanted to say that. And then I also wanted to double back to something. And that is, I often wonder, the more I've learned about the nervous system and the fact that our nervous system is scanning our environment under the surface. And you mentioned little T trauma, big T trauma. I wonder where the line is between intuition and our nervous system. And maybe it's the same thing. Because when I think of someone that I've worked with, or many people that I've worked with that have gone through horrific things, and those things have tuned their nervous system to be amplified and open and hypervigilant of their environments, to me, it's like, oh, that is information that's coming in, but it's at the hands of these emotional traumas. So where's that line between being a dysregulated nervous system that's open and trying to scan for danger versus intuition? How would you describe that?
I don't know that I can, but what I can say is that for myself personally, when it comes to the nervous system and being that constant on guard, it means that I wasn't trusting my team to guide me forward, right? So I wasn't trusting my own intuition. Now, I am the first to tell you that despite the large and small T traumas in my life, I wouldn't have traded a single one of them in if it meant I was a different person sitting in front of you today.
Right.
I'm pretty happy with who I am. I'm more than thrilled. This is part of my journey of my self-love, self-worth that also came along on this tuning into who I am as a soul being, right?
Right.
Was learning to accept myself as I am. And in doing so, and in taking this journey into trusting and understanding my intuition, it got me more grounded and more centered so that my nervous system didn't have to be hypervigilant, right? So I'm sensitive to the things, but now I can calm it down. I don't have to be on all the time because I trust my intuition to keep me safe and keep me out of situations that my overhyped nervous system may have been reading the scenario wrong sometimes.
Mm.
Right? So, because what happens is, we lay down those neural pathways and we have an experience, we have a reaction to that experience. And then if it happens again and again and again, then we are going to react as we've always reacted. Our
Exactly.
body will do it without us even thinking about it. Right? But when you start laying down new neural pathways of, I know that's my trigger, but I don't have to respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I don't have to react to it because there's such a difference between react and respond.
Totally.
Right? And so you teach yourself to respond in a measured way as opposed to reacting. And reaction, I just really quickly, reacting and responding was explained to me this way, and I've never forgotten it. So hopefully your listeners will grab onto this as well. If you are sick, let's say you've got a deep cut that gets infected and your doctor gives you antibiotics for it, right? You take those antibiotics, and if you have a reaction to those antibiotics, it likely means that your airway is closing up, you're getting blisters, your tongue is swelling. That's not good, right? But if your body responds to the medication, it means you're healing.
Right.
So reaction, not good. Responding, very good, right? Reaction is when we just act on that information that's coming in from our nervous system. Responding is going beyond that reaction into the intuition and what am I really getting out of this?
Right. And I think I just realized as you were speaking or remembered that when we're in fight or flight, we're not able to access that higher source of information because we're in fight or flight. We're reacting. And
Exactly.
it reminds me of a past guest on this podcast that spoke about that and said it's kind of like the nervous system reaction is like white noise. She gave this example of the kitchen fan. After you're cooking, you leave it on and you go and sit down at the table and you're like, oh, that noise. And you would come to tolerate that noise. And then you realize it's there and you turn it off. So it's the same thing when our nervous system becomes regulated. She said, oh, the white noise is gone. And then all of a sudden our intuition can actually come out and play.
Right? That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Good.
Yeah. And again, I'm thinking about the newbies, the newly awakened. What else would you like to tell them? What else is important for them to know in terms of what to reach out for specifically? Where can they find development circles? Now we live in an age where things can be accessed online, not just in person.
Exactly. So number one, you alluded at the beginning, maybe in larger centers, it's easier to find a development circle or like-minded individuals that are willing to explore with you kind of thing. And maybe it's a little bit more difficult in the small town. The ones I've talked to in the small town, I'm a small town girl myself, right? My suggestion is start one.
Right.
Right? You take that on. If you can't find one, be the beginning. Right. And I distinctly remember, sharing that advice with somebody that came from the central interior of the province. And they started that circle and they were shocked with how many like-minded people they were in that small town that when they heard about it, they sort of came out of the woodwork. And these are people they knew on a daily basis, saw in and out of the stores and the local schools and all that, had no idea that they were on their own spiritual journey and own spiritual quest, if you will. Right. So one, if you're in a small town and you can't find a circle, I suggest you host one. Right. Two, I tell everybody, make use of what you can for free. Why pay somebody to sit in circle when there is so many people online that offer so much free of charge? Now, quite often I'll say to people, check out a free masterclass.
Hmm.
Now, we all know that master classes are held to get you to sign up for something at the end of their period, whether it's 2, 3, 5 days, whatever it is. At the end, it's all a pitch to get you to buy into something.
For sure.
But you don't have to. You can enter into a free masterclass saying, I'm just here to learn what I can for the
Hmm.
free portion, and then move on to the next free masterclass. You will know when it's no longer enough. I mentioned at the beginning that I took online classes through Carmel Joy Baird out of Northern Alberta. She's a really well known psychic medium. She used to have a show on TV called Mom's a Medium. And for the longest time, for the first 3 or 4 months, those classes were fine. I would just sign in, I'd watch a video, and then I'd go practice what I learned. Right. But there got to be a point where I just wanted more feedback in the
Hmm.
moment. Right. And when I got to that point, that's when I sort of cast about and I just said, okay, Spirit, this isn't working for me anymore. I need something more. And this is where that interaction between you and your team comes in so
For
handy.
sure.
Right. I just handed it over to my team. I said, this is what I needed. Please find me something.
Hmm.
The very next day, I received an email and it started off with, Hi, you don't know me, but we have a mutual friend in common named XYZ.
Hmm.
I hold a local development circle and she suggests you might be interested. It was our dear friend, Reverend Nicole Powell, and she
Nice.
lived 5 minutes away at the time. And that's when I started sitting in circle with Nicole Powell.
I love it. That's
Trust your
so
team,
cool. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And with everything is you take what works for you. And if somebody says something that doesn't land, then you just
Hmm.
leave it behind. It's not for you, right?
Yeah.
We have a belief system based on our own experiences and how things feel with us,
Hmm.
right? That feels right. I believe it, not because it's a dogma, not because I'm being told that's what I need to believe, but
Hmm.
because it feels right to me. And that's how we build our own personal belief system. And we should be constantly testing that belief system. I
Hmm.
believed that last year. Do I believe it now?
Right.
Right? Upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. Always
And
be open. I call it hollow bones, right?
okay.
We're constant beginners.
Right. And you're speaking to the mechanics of that being in the back seat. Because when we're in the back seat, Gus can actually step in if we want. And yet, if we're in the way, we're just, because we have free will, if we're in the way trying to make it happen, it's like, okay, go ahead, have at her.
Right?
But
Gosh
once we
darn that free
surrender,
will.
hmm and I think one of the best stories I have, I was living in the Okanagan, and at the time I was doing human design readings at a yoga studio. And I had another event that was going to happen 3 weeks later. And I was driving, and my car made this sound that I just knew because of all the work I had done that this was not a good sound. This sound was not going to end well. And I had that moment of panic, as we do when something happens with our car. And I just remember being so clear. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to resolve itself. I know it's not good, but I handed over, and as quick as I had the thought, it was gone, and I just kept driving. That night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I awoke to the sound of glass breaking. And before I left the house to go investigate what happened, I was like, that was my car. It's like something happened with my car. And I go outside, the neighbors are all outside, and it turned out that the neighbor across the road had a psychosis on mushrooms. And he decided to do a river dance on the roof of my car. $5,000 worth of damage. Okay. And my car got written off, and I didn't have to worry about fixing it. And within 2 weeks, I had another car. There is no way that I could have created that scenario, right? Like spirit worked through him. Have a river dance. This poor guy, I mean, he didn't actually mean to do what he did. Like, he came and apologized the next day. He actually paid my deductible. Like, I was never mad at him because I was so happy that there was a solution to my problem, right? And I must have said something about, that no one gets hurt. Like, I didn't want to have a car accident as well, right?
Yes, yes.
But it's just such a great example of what is possible when we get out of the way.
It truly, truly is. It really is. And I could sit here all day with you, I'm sure, Ross, and come
Hmm.
up with examples of
Sure.
where we handed it over and the best possible outcome
Right.
is what the outcome was. And nothing that we could have in our wildest imagination ever thought of or considered. And yet it
Right.
worked out for the greatest and highest good. Right?
Right. And of course, after that experience, my mind was like trying to recreate that. How can I recreate those things? How can I
Yeah,
manifest from that place? But I was trying to do it from my mind.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it doesn't work.
Never works. Never work. And
Hmm.
this is where that trust and faith come in. Because once you hand it over to your team, like once you say, you know what, Gus, it's in your hands. I'm trusting you with this. If you sit and fuss and worry about it and you continue that thought process, what you're doing is indicating to Gus, you don't trust them, right? There's no faith, there's no trust. So your mind is still engaged. Your brain is still engaged with trying to do the problem solving.
Yeah,
Right? So
absolutely.
where are you truly handing it over in trust and faith and just letting them do their thing? You're interfering,
Hmm.
right? And setting up your own blocks.
Right.
That's not going to work out for you. Let it go,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So you mentioned the term light workers a few
Mm,
times, and that was certainly a term that I became aware of probably, 15 years ago, something like that, and definitely felt that and definitely feel that now. And I think there's a need for more light workers than ever because of,
absolutely.
I think we're about to experience a lot of adjustment. Let's say it nicely. We're going to have to adjust to a lot. And we're going to need all hands on deck to help everyone get through this time. And so, what would you say to those light workers that maybe they know that?
Step up and step in,
Hmm.
right? Step over the fear. Listen, when I first got started in this, I was scared.
Sure.
Absolutely, I was scared. I didn't know where it was going to lead. I don't know what it was going to. And here I'd spent my entire life thinking all those things that happened to me was because maybe I'm a little bit crazy. My mind doesn't work properly. I'm broken somehow, right?
Hmm.
So to be able to step over that and allow myself to just say, I don't know for sure. Let's just see where it
Hmm.
goes. Right? That took a lot of courage. And I'm just asking you to tap into that courage. Yes, you're going to feel afraid, but step in. I think the largest tsunami of spiritual awakening is what's underway around the world right now. And when we step into who we are in trust and faith and build our own sort of repertoire of what that means for us, then all we have to do is turn to the next person on the path and say, just keep going. It's going to be
Hmm.
okay. Right? Because it really, really will. And the more of us that we have standing at the head of that pathway saying, come this way, because I'm telling you right now, I could be sitting here talking to an audience of 100 people and I could say, this is how I found my way through. And maybe 20 people, if I'm lucky, in that audience, going to raise their hand and say, ooh, that sounds like it's going to work for me. I
Sure.
resonate with what you're saying. I'm going to have 80 people I don't touch that don't get it and aren't going to be able to follow my way. It's not going to work for them. But then you stand up and tell your story. Somebody
Hmm.
else stands up and shares their story. Somebody else. And by the time we're done, those 100 people have a way forward, right? So every single one of us has a unique story. We've had a unique journey. We've got a unique path. And it's our job to share that with others so that they can see their way forward as well.
Hmm.
That's where the light worker comes. We
Sure.
shine the light on the path behind us,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And you're reminding me of something that a channel that I worked with years ago and many times over the years, and I quote her often, but she always said, we're not meant to be a lighthouse to the entire ocean, just our part of the ocean. And that's what you're speaking to, right? That
Yeah,
20% and the others needing to find another teacher. It's exactly that. We need to find that resonance with who's going to be our guide and what does that look like and what is our path and shining that unique number into the world, right?
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Well
Yeah.
put.
And mediumship, there's more to mediumship. Like sometimes people can get scared by that word, but mediumship involves psychic abilities. What else?
I at the beginning sort of dismissed the psychic as part of the mediumship journey
Hmm.
because I did get that scholarship to mediumship school, obviously.
Right.
And so I thought they were two completely separate abilities, gifts, whatever you want to call it. I don't consider them gifts. I just consider them abilities, right? I think they're a gift maybe when you share them with others,
Hmm.
but they're both work with each other. Psychic work is very foundational to mediumship work, right? With the mediumship, most people have experienced, the ones that know that there's something going on. They might have sensed spirit around them. They might have gotten the goosebumps or just that deep knowing, that claircognizance we were talking about. Those kind of freak people out,
Hmm.
right? But 99.9% of the time when you're feeling that is one of your loved ones, right? It's not some random dude that you don't know and never met that, died because, he took his own life after killing 20 other people kind of thing, right? It's your loved ones, your grandma, your grandpa, your ancestors coming through to give you that guidance, give you that support, tell you how perfectly imperfect you are just as you are, right? And so let the fear down so you can let your loved ones in to talk to you. They take up the same space that we do. They're not in some far off realm. They're just right here with us. I liken it to, if there's a ceiling fan going in the room, and it's going really slow, you can pick up those individual blades in the ceiling fan,
Hmm.
right? But when it's moving really, really fast at high speed, it's just a blur. And that's our loved ones, that's our ancestors. Their vibration is just so high, we
Hmm.
can't see their form. It's like
Right.
electricity, you can't see it,
Yeah.
right? But they're here, and we can feel them, and we can
Hmm.
hear them, and we can tap into them. I am telling you, one of the favorite things that I have about this ability to be able to connect with people that have passed on into the realm of spirit, I alluded to the fact that I didn't have a good childhood, right?
Mm.
And I wasn't raised by my mom, my birth mom, from the time I was 6 to 16. So I didn't have a close relationship with her. And I tell everybody unequivocally, I get along better with my mother now that she's dead than I ever got along with my mother in life.
Right.
And the point being, I can still have a relationship with my mom. I have formed a new relationship with my mom, not based on our human experience where ego and addiction got in the way. It
Hmm.
is a pure connection, soul to soul, where I just get to know my mom,
Right.
right? And it's a beautiful thing. And we all have that ability, right? Tapping in to loved ones that maybe we've never met. And we get to
Hmm.
know them. What was their favorite color? What was their favorite food? What was their favorite thing to do and hobby? And what did they do for work? And what was their personality all about? We can still do that with our loved ones in spirit that we've never met, right? And to me, that's the gift, right? We're not
Yeah.
here all alone, ever. Being
Yeah.
alone is an illusion.
Hmm. I love that message. I feel like it's really important one to remember because in spirit, we're not who we were in this life.
No, no,
Yeah.
who we were, what we experienced does not define us,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We define like you said, it's that unique signature that we all have.
Hmm.
That's who we are underneath all the fluff and the bother, right? All the things that we think are not
And
as
by the
important as all the things we feel.
and by the way, in case anybody's wondering, the name of the polymath is Robert Edward Grant. Robert
Okay.
Edward Grant, and it was him and Richard Rudd on the Deja Blue podcast, BLU. So just in case anybody wants to watch it, because it was actually really cool.
I think I'm going to go back and watch that one now. Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, Lee, when I met you at the Blue Caterpillar Emporium, there was no question that in my mind that it was going to be very easy to have a conversation with you, and I think we could easily keep going. But it also
All day.
feels like a good a good place to stop. And before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests a question, and the question is, what is one simple way someone could connect with the sacred today?
Believe in it, right? Just believe in the possibility, right? And it's not complicated. It doesn't have to be confusing. It could be as simple as setting the intention of, I don't know where this is leading me, but where it goes, I will follow. And then whatever comes before you is for you, right? Good, bad, or indifference. If it's in front of you, it's for you.
I love that. I'm all about simplicity, and that's simple, but it's also complicated when the mind gets in the way. So it's not a little challenge.
It is not a small challenge. I hope what your listeners take away is how worthwhile that
Hmm.
effort is, right?
Yeah.
To truly step into the fullness of who you are. It's so far beyond your human understanding. It's
Hmm.
incredible. And words just cannot convey it.
So true.
I mean, I'd like to try. I could spend all day trying with you, sure. We can keep chat.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation and the time we just spent together and all the wisdom that you shared and all of the nuggets that my listeners are going to walk away with. So I really appreciate having you and I look forward to future conversations in person.
I've really enjoyed being here with you, Ross. This is my first podcast, so thank you very much for having me on and this being my first experience. You made it very simple, easy, and it literally just having a conversation with you, and it was brilliant. Thank you.
Excellent. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us on Sacred Sundays. I hope something in today's offering spoke to your spirit, stirred something true, or simply gave you a moment to breathe. If this conversation resonated, please subscribe, rate, or share. It truly helps this work reach the people who are meant to find it. If you'd like to step inside my world a little further, I host a free live practice 3 mornings a week called Start With You. Just 20 minutes on Zoom to return to your own energy. Everything you need can be found at the link in the show notes. Until next time, may your day be slow and sacred.